It is Underwater Wednesday. I am so glad you're here joining me. Today we're going to be testing out in my 90-gallon aquarium over there, jigging raps and jigging shad raps, also jigging shadow raps. So you're like, what in the world is the difference between all these different jigging raps? That's the reason I'm doing this video. I'm glad you've joined me. Let's get loaded. All right, we're gonna start out with the original jigging rap. This is a number 2, 1 1/4 inches and an 1/8 ounce. This is a fire tiger color. And I'm working this bait on 6-pound fluorocarbon. And first I'm just gonna do a rocking motion with this bait. This is a good presentation to use if you're trying to entice a fish that's looking like it's interested. Just kind of do one of these things, rocking it back and forth, kind of teeter-tottering action. And a lot of times with this particular kind of bait, you're gonna have a fathead minnow head, just some kind of minnow head on the treble hook there for enticement. But keep in mind, if you do that, it will affect the action of this bait. So the best action is without a minnow head. So I'm just doing this rocking motion like this. Really imagine we're trying to tempt a fish into biting right now. And we'll pick up the pace a little bit. So I'm jigging the rod tip, and you want this to fall on a slack line. You want that bait to just swing around, and it's basically making a circular kind of action or motion. It's really swinging out, even with relatively subtle movements of the rod tip, but you want that bait falling on a slack line. It's amazing how far this bait swings out, you know, on a vertical presentation, and that's why it was designed this way. You can really cover more water with this bait, even vertically. And now as we come out wider, we're gonna do more aggressive sweeps, and you can just see how far this bait comes out. In all different directions. One thing to keep in mind with this bait, you want to have a swivel. You know, it's all in what works best for you, but a little swivel about 1 foot or 2 feet away from the bait, and that's going to help with line twist because it's just going in all different directions. And you can see just how far this bait swings out. I mean, it's going, you know, at least 1 foot out from center. And then more aggressive, just really trying to call a fish in. Up next is the number 3, 1 1/2 inch, 3/16 ounce jigging rap. And again, this is a fire tiger. All right, well, this is gonna be a bait that, you know, you would use for crappies, same with the last one. The smaller jigging rap's gonna shine for, you know, species like crappies. You know, this one here, you know, bigger crappies, bigger perch. That last jigging rap, it's gonna shine for just about all kinds of panfish. But I'm just gonna do another rocking kind of retrieve here. You can see this one rocks a little bit better. Just got that teeter-tottering motion, back and forth. Good way to tempt them. This presentation, this one, definitely easier to rock. Now we're just gonna pop it a little bit more. Really swings out well. This will call them in, but it's just a little bit more subtle. All right, so we're coming out wider now, and you could really see how far this bait swings out. It's just amazing how on just a vertical, you know, presentation, how much that bait has a, you know, a radius, let's call it a presentation radius. And that's why this thing really shines, is not only you have a more erratic action, and a lot of times that can trigger fish, but it's also just covering more water, you know, and that obviously, if you can make a bait move that much, that's going to trigger fish, but you're also, you know, fish can see it from farther away. The fact that it's just making that much of a ruckus down there, it's going to attract fish from a greater distance. Speed up the pace here a little bit. All right, going to the number 5 now. This is 2 inches and 5/16 of an ounce. Fire Tiger is the color, same as the other baits. And this size is primarily, you know, used for walleyes under the ice. This is the typical standard size you'd use. Very common, this number 5. Just gonna do a presentation, just that undulation kind of presentation. And just to kind of give you an idea how that looks with this size of bait. Rocks really well. And then we'll pick up the pace just a little bit. As you go up in size, boy, it really matters as far as how far that bait's going to swing out. It swings out quite a bit more on these larger baits. And now we'll come out wide, and you can just really see this thing working. Just got a great erratic action. You know, there's nothing that has this kind of action as far as a vertical lure. You know, everything's just kind of straight up and down. Well, this one's straight up and down, left, right, forward, back, every direction. And fish can be very, very triggered by, you know, erratic retrieves like this, erratic presentations like this. It can make all the difference. And now we'll really get pretty aggressive with it. Really try to call them in. All right, up next, the number 7, which is 2 3/4 inches and 5/8 of an ounce. And this, of course, is Fire Tiger again. This is a much bigger jigging rap, obviously, and it's one that you're primarily going to use, you know, in open water. This one doesn't get a lot of love under the ice, but it is, it's a bigger, obviously it's a bigger bait. Look how well it rocks. So we're just doing that laid back, more kind of rocking action, trying to tempt a fish into biting. What's really kind of interesting is you see that front hook, right? Look at how much that head bobs as opposed to that back hook. The back hook does not move as much. It's interesting. We're just kind of rocking it back and forth. We'll pick up the pace. It's almost like a horse galloping. And out wider now. Really see that action well. This bait really shows up well. Obviously it's a bigger bait, but look how far that thing swings out. Remember, you want this bait to fall on a slack line. Doing sharp jerks of the rod tip now. Making sure it falls on a slack line. We'll really pick up the pace now. All right, here's the Big Daddy, the number 9, 3.5 inches, 7/8 of an ounce. Fire Tiger, baby. What's unique about this bait, the whole back is a wedge, like narrow wedge. And then as you go to the bottom of the bait, it's wider. Even that tail, that clear tail on the back, acts as a wedge. See that? And so the bottom is wider, and it just makes it fall erratically and kick out to the left and right, towards you, away from you. Just a very unique design. Coming out wide now, you can tell this thing is made for big fish. This is a big, big jigging rap. It's really swinging around. Got a ton of action, obviously. It's really gonna call those big fish closer to the bait. Then picking up the pace, it's just gets wild. Look at that thing go. This is where this bait shines. The fact that this thing's darting all over the place, this is why you buy a jigging rap. All right, up next is the Jigging Shad Rap, completely different bait now. This is a number 2, 1 inch, 1/8 of an ounce. This color is called Glow Fire Tiger. When you're looking at this bait, you can obviously tell the profile is different. It's a more broader profile, mimics more of a panfish, like a crappie or a bluegill. It's got a broader silhouette. It's not as thin as the Jigging Rap, so it's gonna mimic bait fish like shad better. I would even say small bluegill, small crappie, small perch, that kind of thing. We'll start popping this a little bit, and you can really tell when that thing swings out a ways and comes back. I mean, when it's out in the shadows and then coming back, it really, really looks like a crappie to me, or a bluegill, a young crappie or bluegill. Really, really impressive. This smaller bait like this is gonna be really great for crappies, you know, perch, that kind of thing. Let's just see how well this thing rocks a little bit. That's, again, that presentation you wanna use when you're trying to coax a fish to eat. Just trying to tempt them in here a little bit. Might have a little wax worm on the treble hook just to entice them a little bit more. Now we're gonna come out wide. And boy, that thing really darts well. Look at that thing go. Looks just like, I mean, it looks like a little crappie. Looks like a little baby crappie. Really kicks out to the sides well. I don't notice a difference necessarily between this and the small jigging rap. I think it's swinging out just as much. Very erratic. It looks just like a panfish though. Just a little baby panfish. I can't get over it. The profile, just like not even having a chance to look at it very well, which can be very important when you're trying to catch fish in clear water in particular. You don't want them to have a real good chance of looking at it a lot of times. That'll help to trigger a fish. Just moving it erratically, they just will have to grab it, you know? And just looking at this thing, moving quickly, you don't have a whole lot of time to get a real good look at it. It looks, with the limited time you have when it's moving this quickly, it looks like a little baby crappie or something. And let's pick up the pace a little bit. more than a little bit. Let's really try to call a fish in here. Up next to number 3, Jigging Shad Rap, again in Glow Fire Tiger. Little bit bigger bait now. And we're just gonna do some gentle sweeps of the rod tip upward. Not going too crazy yet. This is a little bit bigger bait. Not too crazy big though. It still would, you know, catch you some crappies, some bigger perch, that kind of thing. All the hooks on these baits are super sharp. I'm a fan of this color too. This is a glow color. A glow color is just great to use whenever, you know, it's great for night fishing obviously, but even in darker water where you might have a lot of snow cover and it's just dark down there under the ice, that glow can really help. And again, this bait kicks out well, very similar to the original Jigging Rap. And coming out wide, and look at the dancing shoes on this bait. Obviously, it's got great action, and the profile, it's just, I can't get over how well this bait looks, how well it mimics a young crappie, a young bluegill, you know, juvenile bluegill, juvenile crappie. Super impressive. The more you work this bait, the more it looks like a small, you know, bluegill or crappie, sunfish, you know. Very impressive. It really kicks out well too, very similar to just the original Jigging Raps. I don't see any difference there. Yeah, I've got to add more of these to my arsenal for sure. And then, you know, if you really start picking up that pace, now we're picking it up. I mean, you can just, I mean, this thing's gonna call some fish to it. There's no doubt. All right, here's a number 5 Jigging Shad Rap in Glow Fire Tiger. And this is the biggest Jigging Shad Rap I could find. I don't know if they make a bigger one, but this is the biggest that we're gonna demonstrate today. One of the interesting things about this particular bait is that it's encased in plastic. So you can maybe see it there. It's essentially a plastic shell. And so the finish, the color, the body itself is protected. Here you can see it better. You know, so it's probably a more durable bait. And I don't know if it was just an easier way. I'm not exactly sure why they designed these Jigging Shad Raps that way, and the original Jigging Shad Rap is built entirely different. So I just thought that was interesting. Yeah, that body is encased in plastic. And so it probably makes it a pretty darn durable bait. So this is going to be a great size for just about everything, really. Walleyes, you know, under the ice, you know, the bigger predators, but not, you know, obviously not super big predators, but this is just a good all-around size, this number 5. And we'll come out wide now and really make this bait shine. It just never gets old watching these things work. You know, from a completely vertical position and for it to just go in all different directions. I find it quite exciting. And now we'll pick up the pace a little bit. Really calling them in now. I would say that The Jigging Shad Rap, I don't know that it goes out as far as the original Jigging Rap. It's pretty darn comparable. I don't see much of a difference in the action really as far as how far these baits swing out. All right, this is a new bait, the Jigging Shadow Rap. This is a number 9, and this color is live smelt. And the first thing that you'll notice about this bait is that it doesn't have a front hook. So there isn't a hook off its nose like there is on the tail. This bait is a more subtle bait. It's going to have a more subtle glide. Just look at how reflective that face is. We'll do a little bit of just subtle rocking here just to kind of see how that looks. And again, that head is rocking way more than the tail. I find that fascinating. Just trying to coax one into biting right now. Just imagine a scrumptious minnow head on the treble hook, and you're really trying to tempt one into biting. That head is just rocking back and forth, tail not moving nearly as much. You can almost just pound the head. And we'll just work it a little bit more aggressive. And coming out wide now, and you could see it's a much more gentle glide. It's not as erratic. And so this is a more subtle jigging rap. It's kind of designed, according to Rapala, for bigger fish. These fish that, you know, they've probably seen all kinds of different jigging raps in their time. Something a little bit different for them to look at. A little bit more of a subtle presentation. Still swinging out quite a bit, but this is a little bit lighter bait compared to a number 9 original Jigging Rap. So it's just, everything's more subtle. You can really tell. And then we'll pick up the pace a little bit more. Just takes a longer time for it to get back to center. I could see this bait really being a great bait for, you know, open water in the fall. Just when the water temperatures are dropping, fish just want more of a kind of more of a neutral presentation or more subtle presentation. And there you have it, an underwater demonstration of what jigging raps look like. Also, we did the Jigging Shad Rap and the Jigging Shadow Rap. It can be a little confusing, I realize, but hopefully after this video you're a little less confused. That's the reason why I wanted to do this video, because I was like, what's the difference between these baits? So hopefully you got something from this video, and hopefully I'll see you next Underwater Wednesday.